Hello there, welcome again. Now, today I want us to look at how to respond to question number two. Question number two is called an excerpt or an extract in English paper two. Question number two is always an excerpt or an excerpt. Now, if you like this content and want to support us reach more people, please hit the subscription button, share, like, and comment for more of such content. Let's dive right in. So question two is in English paper two. Question two is an excerpt or an extract. And for the year 2024, this excerpt is going to come from Fathers of Nations. They keep alternating between the two compulsory texts. So if this year they bring a novel, then next year they are going to bring a play. So in this case, our compulsory novel is Fathers of Nations by Paul B. Vitam. This is a critically important question. It carries the most marks in English paper 2, that is 25 marks. So you cannot afford to compromise with this kind of question. I want to encourage, if you are a student listening to me, please go read that text very well. That is Fathers of Nations. Understand the underlying thematic concerns. Understand how one event leads to yet another event. Know the underpinnings in Fathers of Nations, and then you will be in a better position to respond to the excerpt questions. Please do not compromise with it. Many students fail in this section because of laziness, because they think it is just way too impossible to respond to questions in an excerpt. But I want to assure you that it is not difficult, that is quite approachable if you are going to read the text and understand episodic happenings, how one event leads to yet another event, related events, major characters and what they do, major happenings in the said text, and you'll be good to go. So what exactly is an excerpt? An excerpt is an extract that we take from a larger text, and then we ask you comprehension questions based on how you have understood. And we are going to ask you this particular question. The first question is typically is on plot and recall of the plot. So you need to read and master the text very well. And for the first question, you are only supposed to give notable events, not too far away from the excerpt, because usually the first question will be framed as either you place the excerpt in its immediate context. When they ask you to place an excerpt in its immediate context, what you need to do is you say briefly what happens before and briefly what happens after. And remember, I've said that you limit yourself to events not very far away from the excerpt. So that is the first question. They can ask you to say what happens before. When they ask you to say what happens before, you give events that happen before the excerpt, not very far away from the excerpt. And also notable means important, vital. So that is usually the first question. Please always endeavor to respond to that question correctly. Just know how how events unfold from one event to yet another event. From the moment we meet these guys at the Seamount Hotel, we follow their story, not the stories of those 5 guys, as I tried to explain in our previous episode. For those who missed out, you can check out on the previous episode on the review of Fathers of Nations. Understand the stories of Kimani Karanja and what happens to him and why he's frustrated with the government. Understand the story of engineer Saif Tahir from Libya. Understand the frustrations of Comrade Melusi, that's Ngobile Melusi from Zimbabwe. Understand the frustrations of Pastor Chineke Chiamaka from Lagos, Nigeria. Understand all that frustration. Understand the role played by Dr. Afolabi, and so on. So understand the book, read it well, master it, and then you'll be in a position to respond to the first question. If there's a question on attitude, if they ask you about attitude, you identify attitude using an adjective or a descriptive noun. Always remember that in this particular question, any question touching on literature, whether it's poetry, whether it's a set book question, whether it's a narrative, anything touching on literature, identification must be followed with illustration. Identify and illustrate. Identify and illustrate. And you give credible evidence from the text, and so on. So I've said for adjective, you use descriptive nouns or, for attitude, you use descriptive nouns or an adjective. For example, an adjective of admiration. You are using a descriptive noun, an adjective of admiration or an admiring attitude. So make sure you correct and also give illustrations where possible. You can also be told to give the character traits. Another question is giving of character traits. You limit yourself to the character traits within the set text, within the excerpt, that particular extract. Do not go outside the domain of the extract for your answers. You limit yourself to the extract for your answers. So you identify the character trait, you give the answer, and make sure that these character traits are quantifiable. These are characters that you can quantify, characters that are not opinion. You give those kind of characters. So make sure that there is identification and illustration. Remember, if you just give illustrations without identification, you score 0. You score 0. Avoid spelling mistakes, because spelling mistakes can easily create another word. So make sure that you spell those words from the extract correctly, and also check on mischaracterization. Mischaracterization can happen in 2 ways. One is through pronoun mix-up. You mix up the pronouns, and this, of course, affects the entire word or the meaning. It affects the meaning. Or if it's not pronoun mix-up, is when you use wrong names. So you come up with completely new characters that are not part of the excerpt or part of the set text. For example, if you say he and you are referring to Ngobile Melusi, if you say she and you are referring to Ngobile Melusi, you are going to change the meaning and you score 0. Also, referring to Melusi as Mwelusi, you are going to score 0 because you don't have any Mwelusi in Fathers of Nations. Now, also, if you're talking about 2 characters, avoid the use of pronouns so as not to be ambiguous. You are referring to 2 characters. Let's say, for example, Professor Kimani Karanja and Dr. Folabi, and you keep saying he. We do not know if you are whether you are referring to Afolabi or to Kimani Karanja. So please be very careful in your use of pronouns, so that you don't just say he without specifying. There are 2 characters and you're just saying he or she without specifying which character in particular. In characterization, in awarding of traits, in awarding of character traits, you are only supposed to use adjectives in identification. If you use a noun, even accidentally, it's unacceptable. If, for example, a candidate or a student writes hypocrite instead of hypocritical, you are going to score 0. If a student writes concern instead of concerned, you score 0. If a student writes coward as a character trait, coward as a character trait instead of cowardly, and this trait, students make most mistakes really on coward, instead of saying cowardly as an adjective and as a quantifying adjective. So you have to be very, very particular so that you do not use nouns when you are giving character traits. Be very careful. And remember, I want to repeat my clarion call. Identification must be accompanied with illustration. Now, I want you to note this. If a character is intelligent, you don't say clever. It's unacceptable. Instead, use other qualities. That will, which are quantifiable and so on. And then you are not supposed to use the negative marker. Remember this negative marker, not or its contraction. It's not allowed in giving of character trait. You should not say that a character is not enthusiastic, for example. You should instead say what they are. Unenthusiastic. So do not say someone is not. Give what they are. Avoid using the negative marker in quantifying or giving your character traits. Another question. You can be told to give literary devices used in a given maybe excerpt. There are many. Remember, there's foreshadow, there's flashback, there's use of dialogue. So you use those that appear in your extract, not that maybe you read them elsewhere. It must come out clearly from the excerpt before you use them, and of course you have to back them up with supporting evidence. So when they ask you that, there are many, like for example, use of dialogue. Use of dialogue is common, especially in Fathers of Nations, but most students would ignore that and leave a blank space. Please do not do that. Peruse keenly, go through the excerpt keenly. There are maybe even figures of speech. There are even maybe use of like irony, use of like humor, use of like similes, metaphor, what have you. So do not leave a blank space. Identify and illustrate. Now, this is a point of concern, that identification of figures of speech from the extract has become problematic, especially for most candidates. Now, you make sure that you identify. Remember, I'm drawing my class from NEC reports. So from the NEC report, they say that students have to pick up from there. Now, I was saying that according to the NEC report 2023, most students are unable to identify figures of speech. And remember, I was saying that figures of speech will include, but not limited to, metaphor, similes, personification, symbolism, and even use of idiomatic expressions. So please, you should be able to point out figures of speech and also illustrate if they happen to be in the extract. And then please take note of this. Unless expressly required to do so, avoid going out of the excerpt for your responses. Unless you've been asked to do so unless you've been directed by the question to do so, you should avoid going out of the excerpt for your responses. And also note that you should avoid forcing traits, themes, styles from your class notes into the extract. A theme is not part of the extract, but you want to force it there because it is in your classroom notes or it's in a guidebook. Make sure that it is evident and you can qualify it, you can illustrate it. So do not just force it into the exam room, into the extract if it is not there. Now, you can also be asked to summarize or to make notes. If they ask you to make notes, only consider main points by way of listing, highlighting. Highlight by way of listing. You can use numbers, you can use Roman numbers, you can use the alphabet, you can use asterisks, you can use bullets, you can use what have you, all that. So if they ask you to make notes, please make notes. You list, you don't write in continuous prose. They ask you to summarize, please write in continuous prose, one entity, bearing in mind word limit. You consider main points, but you join them together by means of conjunctions to create a cohesive paragraph or entity summary, to create a cohesive summary. You join them, those main points, you join them together by means of linking words and conjunctions. So if they ask you to make notes or to summarize, please make sure that you do so. You can also be asked a question on grammar. Stick to the rules of grammar. They can ask you to add a question tag. Maybe there's a statement and then they ask you to add a question tag. Start with a comma, small letter, then give your tag, and then with a question mark at the end for you to score. So follow the rules of grammar. They can ask you to rewrite beginning with this. This is called inversion. Maybe they want you to invert the sentence. You are changing the subject, verb order. You want to change it, subject, verb order in inversion. So if they ask you a question on grammar, please make sure that you do so and you stick to the rules of grammar. Now, they can ask you also to give events that are not in the extract, using your knowledge of the rest of the novel Fathers of Nations. So they can ask you, using your knowledge of Fathers of Nations, where else do we encounter Mrs. Fiona Mackenzie having a verbal discourse with Dr. Folabi, for instance? Or where else do we encounter the two, that is Fiona Mackenzie and Dr. Folabi? You should be in a position to do so. Where else do we see Fiona Mackenzie talking to Nicholas Sentinel, for example? So you should be in a position to do so. So you read the book very well, you understand the major underpinnings. There's this incident where Comrade Melusi is denied entry into the summit. Know what happens before that, what's going to happen after that. You should be in a position to do so. So please, that is how you should respond to an extract or excerpt question. Please do not leave, if you are a student, don't leave out a blank space. It is quite manageable if you read the book keenly and you understand the book. You'll be in a position to reproduce the same in an examination. That is it for today. Remember, if you like this content and you want this content to receive more of such content, please hit the subscription button, like, comment, and share to reach more people. Until next time, it is goodbye.